Hey everybody, my name is Michael Anders with Shape Up Fitness and Wellness Consulting. My focus in our company is to help people recover from injuries and to train for longevity. That means to be able to do this for as long as possible. Now, a couple of things we're going to go over today is like, how do you assess your baseline fitness? So if you haven't been doing anything and you want to get back to it, do you need to assess your baseline fitness? And is that even necessary? So the answer is no, it's not necessary. You don't need to assess your baseline fitness. You obviously can get started right away. You can start moving. You can exercise. You can do strength training, cardio. You don't need any of this. Not really. However, there is something to be found useful in having your baseline fitness assessed. And we are not just looking here at how strong you are, whatever, but we're looking at a couple of other things. And the first thing that we're going to go to, that is, well, let's talk about your sleep. All right. So people are like, oh my God, I've heard this a million times. Yeah, you sure have. But are you actually applying this, right? So that's really the problem, right? So the best thing you can do is, like, if you have a partner, ask your partner, hey, do I snore? If you do snore, newsflash for you, you probably should get this checked out, especially if it's something that is on a regular basis. Now, if you don't snore on a regular basis, it might not be a big deal. You might have been like, I don't know, like a sinus infection, something like that, and afterwards everything's good, you don't snore anymore, and we don't have to worry about this. But if you do snore regularly, I would highly recommend talking to your doc about it and maybe even get a sleep study done to see, hey, is it sleep apnea a thing here? So what is sleep apnea? Sleep apnea is this when you actually momentarily stop breathing at night, and that often leads to a drop in the blood oxygen level, and that can be detrimental to your sleep. You wake up, not consciously necessarily, but you wake up a little bit, so you're not going through all the sleep phases. So definitely recommend talking to your healthcare professional or sleep specialist to help you figure that out. So the same thing goes for if you say, well, I'm getting plenty of sleep. I'm sleeping 7 to 9 hours and I am always tired. That is also a good indication for having that checked out. Another thing is, if you get up more than once, maybe twice a night, and you have to go to the bathroom, especially as older men, that is problematic as well. A, it's not good for your sleep, but B, it could also indicate maybe potential issues with the prostate. So again, you want to have that checked out, have somebody look at that, because sleep is the basis for everything. It's literally the base for everything. Like, it makes being healthier easier, it makes gaining strength easier, it makes having endurance easier. And it's getting all these gains. Nothing is that as stimulating as sleep. So you literally do nothing. So you just sleep. You don't have to do anything for it per se. Right? So how much sleep do you need? That depends on the individual, but usually it's between 7 and 9 hours. And do we have people who get away with less? Absolutely we do. There are many of those. So you might get away with sleeping less, but do you really perform at your best level? Chances are you're not. So get your ass to bed. Get a good bedtime routine, like have a little hanky-panky or whatever. Once you're all relaxed, you're off to bed and you're sleeping. So that's really, you want to leave yourself enough time for that. So if you're going to bed and you're leaving 7 hours, you're not getting 7 hours of sleep. It's not like you're down to bed and you're out. That's not how it is. Most of us take anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes to fall asleep, depending on what we have on our minds. So let's talk about nutrition. So what does it have to do with my baseline fitness? Well, it has to do everything with your baseline fitness. So let's assume that you are actually sleeping. That's great. But now you're eating like shit, you're eating a bunch of junk, and you're not getting the protein that you need. So now all the strength training that you've been doing, well, it goes kind of by the wayside, at least partially, or you're not getting everything that you want. And especially as we're getting older, newsflash, like muscle mass doesn't come in spades. And anybody who really has tried to gain muscle mass, that's actually really tough. And the older we get, it's not gonna get any easier. So you wanna make sure that you have your nutrition down pat. So what's the first thing I would do? The first thing I would do if I were you is like have a food record. Write down what you're doing. Get an idea. How many calories are you taking in? What's your protein like? What's your carbohydrates like? What's your fats like? Fiber do you take? And just do that for like a week or two. It's great. It gives you an overview of what you're doing, and then you can make modifications. Now you're like, oh, well, my protein has been a little bit low. Remember, you want to go at about a gram of protein per day. per pound of body weight. So if you weigh 170 pounds, roughly evenly 170 pounds of protein. That's great. If you don't, might want to reconsider this. So you will see really quickly what's missing in your diet. You will also see what you can improve. So next, let's talk about strength. So strength is a crucial thing here. So I think we're living in a time nowadays where most of us realize, okay, strength training is not something that's just optional, especially as we're getting older. Like I mentioned just now, we are losing muscle mass as we're getting older, especially if we're not counteracting it. And with our lifestyles, right? If you're on a 9-to-5 job and you're sitting behind the desk and you're not moving much, your body doesn't need a lot of muscle for that. So it's getting rid of it. That becomes problematic as you're getting older. And now you might have challenges like doing your daily life activities. You might have trouble opening a bottle or something like that. Anything that requires any sort of physical strength. What kind of tests can we do when it comes to that? So like a hand grip strength test is really easy. They're relatively cheap nowadays. And you can do a simple push-up test. You couldn't do it on the knees. You can do it a regular test, and you can just do as many push-ups as you can. And you can look that up really quickly and you find comparison for your age and gender. The chair to stand test. And that is something that is for the lower body strength. It's basically how often can you get up out of a chair 30 times, all the way up, all the way back down. And then we have the standing long jump test. So that's something you got to be a little bit more careful if you have like knee problems or hip problems and you're just kind of new to exercise again, probably would skip this one. But the others are perfectly fine to do and relatively easy to do. And especially as you're getting older, the chair to stand test is actually very important because I mean, that's just you being able to get up and down and see how often can you do that. So relatively easy to find, just Google it, you find a bunch of benchmarks, easy to do. Endurance. So endurance is a thing, right? And everything that you do, it takes some sort of endurance. Some things just don't require a lot, right? Me going to the refrigerator and coming back to my chair doesn't need a lot, but going for a walk with my kids or my grandkids, hanging out with a friend, walking in a town, I'm on vacation, well, all of a sudden that's a completely different story. So a really easy one that you can do is a 6-minute stair test. It's a walking test. So you basically walk as far as you can in 6 minutes. That's a great tool. It's really easy to do, especially for the elderly population or the older population. This is fantastic. The YMC step test, it's similar. So you have like an H in step. So that is set. It has to be 8 inches. You do it for 3 minutes and then you measure your heart rate at the end of it. And there are also benchmarks for that as well. If you are a little bit fitter and you have a little bit more, you just have been doing more, you could do it like a Cooper test. That is a maximum test in endurance. So you run for 12 minutes, you cover as much distance, and then you can look, okay, how do I compare to my age group? That does a little bit better in adults who are relatively fit and healthy adults. It doesn't do so well in youngers, but it doesn't matter so much. It helps you, for example, to compare again, to do it 6 weeks later or 8 weeks later after you've been doing something and you say, oh, look at this. I got faster. Good job. Yeah, well done. We're making progress. And then lastly, we're talking about balance. So especially if you're older than 40, so balance goes away as we get older, because again, we're not doing that. It's not like you're jumping around, you're balancing on the curb as an adult. I mean, like maybe you do, I don't. And so here is what I like to do with my clients. Pretty simple. So I do things like, for example, stand on 2 feet with eyes open, do that for 30 seconds. Does it work? Can you do this without like swaying a lot? Your hands are on your hip. Then stand on 2 feet, close your eyes. Then you stand in line, always with your hands on your hips. So you cannot use your hands to balance. Do it with closed eyes. And then you do the same thing with single leg. And so those get progressively harder, and then you can see where you're at. So like I mentioned before, you don't have to do these tests. They're not a requirement, right? You can do shit right away. Nobody prevents you from doing anything, but it can be really helpful to figure out where you're at. Do you need to practice all of this first? No. I mean, obviously, if you do strength training, better at your grip strength and then push-ups, that's usually something that goes hand in hand to some extent at least. So that's great. But balance, for example, is something that does not randomly improve. So that's something that you probably should work on. Even though, having said that, strength, if you're stronger, balance should get better by itself as well. And then when it comes to endurance, yeah, that's not much you can do regarding not having to go outside. You got to go outside, got to run, or you got to be on a bicycle or do anything. You got to do some cardiovascular training. So basically, look at what you're doing, look at what your drawbacks are, where you're struggling a little, and then build that into your training. Even if you did 5-10 minutes of each of those several times a week, that's great. That's a whole lot better. And even if you don't get a lot better at it, you at least reducing the decline that you might be experiencing. And one thing that's crucial, like I said before, I cannot harp on it enough, is sleep and nutrition. Sleep and nutrition are the key thing. I'm the first one to cut out sleep. I don't have the time of the day. I wanted to have some alone time, just hanging out, playing a video game, having some quality time with a girlfriend, and before you know it, you don't have any sleep, and then everything tanks. So you don't want that. So you want to make sure that you have that. So we're welcome to go to my blog on my website. It's charlottepersonaltrainer.org. You will find a couple of norms as well in here. You can always hit me up and send me a direct message. Otherwise, have fun figuring out where you stand. See you next time.